An all-American happening, the Daytona 500. And the future in street motorcycling, not so all-American. You'll get the whole story today on Motorweek Illustrated. Hi, I'm Dave Despain. Welcome to Motorweek Illustrated. This week's show jam-packed, so let's begin quickly with the Daytona 500, the great American race. It's also a great American happening. From every corner of the country, for the 24th consecutive year, stock car racing's faithful returned last week to Daytona Beach. They partied, they soaked up the sun, had beer and barbecue. Mom, Dad, the kids, everybody was there. Daytona International Speedway was a miniature city. We were there too. This sunburn is for real. That's not makeup. And I'll tell you, it was a good time. Last Sunday, the 500. Traditionally, a 10-car battle all day long, and a race that tells us a lot about who's going to run strong for the rest of the season. But this year, it didn't happen that way, and here's why. Most of the guys who had a shot at winning, including big names, Petty, Parsons, Bonnet, Yarborough, ended up bouncing off the walls and off each other. Bobby Allison stayed out of trouble and led 3/4 of the race, though his bumper was torn off on lap 4 and triggered the day's first big pileup. Race reporters went scrambling for a scoop as race cars went every which way. Tim Brewer, crew chief on Cale Yarborough's car, perked up their ears with this heat of battle observation.
I got a feeling that somewhere along the lines that bumper was intended to come off, and I don't know, in what manner it was, fastened on the car, but it wasn't fastened on there good enough to stay.
There was some old-fashioned Daytona drafting. Dale Earnhardt used a slingshot move to scoot into the lead, but the fast guys who didn't wreck blew up. That's the end for Earnhardt. A turn 1 crash spelled doom for Ron Bouchard, Richard Petty, pole sitter Benny Parsons, and Neil Bonnet, who ground his flaming T-Bird into the outside wall. That left Cale Yarborough and Darrell Waltrip as the only real contenders, but Yarborough couldn't avoid a spinning Gary Ballou. Cale made it to the pits, changed tires, and held on to finish second. Waltrip fell out with a blown engine. Avoiding the destruction to win it easily, Bobby Allison, though he ran out of gas on the cool-off lap and had to be pushed to victory lane. That recalled last year's 500, when a fuel shortage caused a burned piston and Allison settled for second, running on 7 cylinders. In victory lane, amid all the celebration, our Ned Jarrett brought up that incident a year ago.
Yeah, it really was, Ned. Last year I won $104,000 and nobody was smiling, so this year we redeemed ourselves a little bit.
Well, I know that after winning this race, the second time that you have won it, and going into the 1982 season wanting that Winston Cup championship perhaps as badly as anything else right now, this has to give you a boost.
Well, Ned, I think that it is a great start, but it's going to be 29 more tough races, and we're going to go one race at a time and just do the best we can, and I hope that I don't let the guys down, and I hope we just keep everything going like it's going now.
Allison obviously knows all of today's hard luck cases will be back next week. The standings match the order of finish in the first Grand National race of 1982. Meanwhile, a heartwarming story. Back in 10th place, Winston West champ Roy Smith was going to Daytona to watch, but his fans in Vancouver, British Columbia said nuts to that, and they raised $35,000 so Roy could rent a racer for the 500.
I've always had one sponsor and one car owner. Bob Beadle from Seattle has always been sponsoring and owning the car, and all of a sudden I got about 500 people that put in a little money, so I had to answer to an awful lot if I didn't make the program, but now we've made it, finished 10th, and we're very happy.
And finally, the most prominent name in the Daytona field, one J.D. Stacy. Jim's a coal mining millionaire who loves racing. His name adorned the sides of no fewer than 7 cars in the 500, including the pole sitter Parsons and the 3rd and 4th place finishers, Ruttman and Labonte. We wondered why Stacy's benevolent hand reached out to comparative newcomers, Ruttman and James Sauter.
Well, I think both of those guys are fantastic race drivers, just like Jody and Marcus. A little bit of help, and they get right up in the front, as we seen out there yesterday when I had 4 cars in the top 5 running in the 125. So if they got some help, you know, they can be as good as the rest of these guys.
A 7-car team doesn't come cheap, but Stacy, who has made and lost a couple of fortunes in his career, makes no bones about it.
Well, when we came in and bought out the new racing complex up there, you know, we put about $2 million into that, and then to run all these cars costs more than $2 million a year.
For all that money, J.D. Stacy gets his name on some fast cars in very big letters for everyone to see. Benny Parsons has a theory about that.
We all are given so many God-given gifts. Sight and hearing are two. And you know, in the Dale Carnegie course, they teach that the sound of our own name coming out of the lips of another person is the sweetest sound that we'll ever hear. And Jim don't hear good.
Jim don't hear good. Right, Benny. Meanwhile, a 500 footnote. This has to do with STP. John Boone, the president of the company, which backs Richard Petty and the Patrick Racing team, resigned last Tuesday. No indication yet what that will do in terms of the company's racing program. We'll be right back. Before he became the king of IndyCar racing, Rick Mears was out dodging sagebrush and jackrabbits in the off-road wars. He made the transition to Indianapolis with a lot of help from teammate Bobby Unser, who's an acknowledged master of car preparation and testing. But Unser has gone to another team now, and Mears alone must shake down a new Penske PC-10 with which he'll defend his IndyCar championship.
Well, we'll miss Bobby. You know, the testing, you know, it's hard to replace that experience. I'm learning all the time, and I've still got a long ways to go, but it'll help my learning curve quite a bit because I'll be doing most of the development work, most of the testing, and I'll get more miles in. And in that respect, I won't miss him because it'll help me in the future and, you know, just speed up my learning process. But I feel we can get the same job done anyway. The main difference being it may not be as quick, you know, but we're going to try to have around 2,000 miles, test miles on the new Gould charge before the first race. You do that mainly for the reliability and get all the miles on a new car that you can. So any little failures you might have will happen before the race season starts, and you can get it sorted before you get going.
The fans only see the Sunday afternoon glory, but race driving is a full-time job.
They keep us pretty busy year-round, you know, between the races and the champ cars, and we have a test schedule that's more involved than the race schedule. We have more days and more dates just about really in testing than we do in the races. And then also getting into and working with a deal with Ford Motor Company to run a turbocharged Mustang in the IMSA series and some of the endurance races and some of the sprint races. With all of that and the testing in that car too, and then appearance work and thanks for the sponsors and for Gould and everything else, we stay awful busy.
Target date for the PC-10 testing program, March 28th. That's when the kart season opens at Phoenix International Raceway. This may look like just another dirt track motorcycle racer, but she is something special. Tammy Kirk, the racy lady from Dalton, Georgia.
I've just been born and raised in racing and love it, the art of it, just getting out there, I guess, beating the boys.
This is a male-dominated sport, and we wondered how the boys feel getting beat by a teenaged female.
Some of them just think, you know, I'm another rider. Some of them don't like me. I don't really bother me.
Kirk was Ohio State champion, third in the nation as a novice in 1980. She moved up to a 750cc junior bike last year, and her success continued. Tammy owes it all to Daddy.
My dad, he used to race a long time ago, but we just owned a shop, and he sponsored a racer and everything, so I just growed up and went with him. I've been riding motorcycles ever since I was 3.5 years old.
This was Kirk's first victory as a junior last spring, Savannah, Georgia. Next Thursday and Friday night, she'll go back to Savannah for her debut as an expert class rider. She's only the second woman in American Motorcyclist Association history to achieve that ranking. A month ago today, we took you up to Eagle River, Wisconsin for the World Snowmobile Championships. That was a 20-lap battle, a 100-mile-per-hour sprint around a frozen half-mile oval. Now the snowmobile crowd is back in Eagle River, this time for the final race in the Endurance Championship Series. They'll run 300 laps in that main event tomorrow. And we'll have the story for you coming up next week. A whole bundle of race results are upcoming when we return. The top stars of American motocross racing served up a double helping of action last weekend. It happened at the Seattle Kingdome, rounds 2 and 3 of the 12-race Wrangler Supercross Series. With a $75,000 series point fund on the line, these guys will full throttle any obstacle the course builders can dream up. Defending series champion Mark Barnett was an early contender, then he lost a chain. Front-runner Brock Glover also had bad luck. Crashed on the last lap after colliding with his teammate Bob Hanna. The Supercross racer who really has his act together, Donnie Hansen. 2 weeks ago, he won his first Supercross race ever. Saturday night at Seattle, Hansen made it 2 in a row. Honda in the first 3 spots. Hanna survived that tangle with Glover to take 4th. Sunday afternoon's highlight was this classic last lap battle. Mark Barnett, #1, had led all the way, while Darrell Schultz scrambled and scrapped and fought his way into contention. This young California Charger tried every move in the book. There's the one that got him in trouble. Schultz out of shape, and Barnett holds on to win it. The victory puts Barnett on track in his quest for a 2nd straight championship. The first 5 looked like this, and that runner-up finish for Schultz moved him into a tie with Hansen for the series point lead. They also do this stuff outdoors. This is the Lake Madera course in California, where the Golden State Motocross Series will be decided tomorrow. Point standings going in, Johnny O'Mara undefeated through the 6 series races so far. 2-time Supercross winner Hansen can obviously do it outdoors as well. And Lackey is America's perennial contender for the World Motocross Championship. Now, watch the kid coming up the left-hand side of the jump. He comes to the line, makes his move. Everybody likes to show off for the camera, right? Now let's wrap up a couple of Speed Week stories for you. The 300 finish sportsman race on Saturday before the 500 down at Daytona. Dale Earnhardt led Jody Ridley by just about this much all day, and he held that lead right to the checkered flag. Most of the Winston Cup race weekends include a support event like this. The story here, CBS and the USA Network have reached an agreement that will result in this event and many more like it being televised. That's always good news for race fans. They run stock cars 52 weeks a year at Florida's New Smyrna Speedway. But during Daytona Speed Week, New Smyrna really pulls out the stops. Despite 3 rainouts in 9 nights, the 16th annual World Series of Asphalt Stock Car Racing paid $126,000 across 3 divisions. Here are the champions. Late model driver Mike Eddy won the first 3 races, then Trickle caught him from behind. Greg Sachs, the new superstar of the modifieds. Bruce Lawrence topped the Thunder Car division. Good week of racing down at New Smyrna. The annual SCCA National Runoffs, Road Atlanta. That's the season's big event for amateur sports car enthusiasts. 2 days of qualifying races at Texas World Speedway last weekend crowned 25 class champions. Here are all the double winners. They piled up a lot of points toward an Atlanta trip come October. These folks really are the backbone of American road racing, and these qualifiers will run all across the country this spring and summer. Now, we're not about to pass up the opportunity here to congratulate one Duck Waddle, who won the D Sports Racing class both days down in Texas. Nice job, Duck. Coming up, Bob Varsho with news of a big racing drug bust and an exclusive look into the 2-wheeled future. How's this for a fantasy? Screaming down back roads at breakneck speeds, no cops in sight. This is pro rallying, the motorized equivalent of downhill skiing. Rallyists race point to point against time, never sure what's around the next bend. Basically a European motorsport, rallying is now booming here in the States. These are back-breaking, machine-bending contests. They have names like the Tour de Forest and the Press-On Regardless Run, or the wintertime favorite, the Snowdrift Rally. For '82, the SCCA has scheduled 14 rallies throughout the U.S. Competitors come from as far away as New Zealand. That's home for defending champ Rod Millen, who won an amazing 8 races last year. Millen's challengers include Jean-Paul Perouse of Canada and Vermont's John Buffum, who will soon take delivery on an Audi Quattro, the supercar of rallying. The pro rally season kicks off this weekend. The Big Bend Bash in Alpine, Texas. And that's on the Motorweek schedule for coverage next week. Motorweek's pledge to you is to cover the entire realm of motoring. And while we emphasize motorsports, we're also very interested in those items that affect us all as consumers. Now, for example, the motorcycle buying season looms just ahead, And in a parking lot in Gardena, California, our Steve Evans stepped into the two-wheeled future.
Wow, what a ride. If you're one of those who still thinks a motorcycle has to shake, rattle, and leak oil all over the garage floor, you're in for a real surprise the first time you sling your leg over one of the new high-tech middleweights that are going to be coming from Japan. Honda really started it all with this new CX500 Turbo. There's equipment on this bike that has never before been seen on a motorcycle. They call it the state of the art. Knowing the competitive nature of the Japanese, you can be pretty sure that most of the major labels will soon come up with something similar. The CX500 started as a clean sheet of paper. Technically speaking, the exhaust-driven turbocharger is its major contribution. Long used by Kawasaki drag racers, this is the first production turbo. It's front-mounted just behind the radiator that water cools the 80-degree V-twin engine. At low speeds, there's no more power than any good 500, but when the tach nears 5,000, get a grip, because you're going for a ride, brother. No carburetors here. The first computerized electronic fuel injection handles the job. In fact, the mini computer monitors a number of the bike's functions for proper air and fuel induction. It even has a self-diagnosis feature. The front forks feature track, torque-reactive anti-dive control. The front brake caliper is hinged so that it can actuate a valve to prevent front-end dive without affecting brake feel. The 4-valve per cylinder engine develops 78 horsepower at 9,000 RPM. That's equal to most of the 750s. That power is transmitted through a 5-speed gearbox to the shaft drive rear axle. Instrumentation is as complete as any expensive sports car, including even a digital clock. But the most exciting gauge is that turbo boost. The turbo starts to set you back in the seat at about 3,000 RPM. The 500 suddenly takes on the feel of a 750. In fact, the roll-on acceleration is equal to that of an 1100cc machine. Here's an exclusive Motorweek look at the new Yamaha 650 Turbo Seika. It's a bigger engine, it's lighter by 50 pounds, a rear-mounted turbo, but without water cooling or fuel injection. Well, we've learned a couple of things here today. The turbo and the Darth Vader styling are here to stay. Now, if these machines are starting to seem more like half a car to you than a motorcycle, you're right. And they're priced about the same at $5,000 a copy, about what half a car would cost you. This is Steve Evans for Motorweek in California.
There's a lot of late-breaking news out there today, including a big race at Richmond, Virginia. Bob Varsha, what's going on out there?
Dave, round 2 of the 1982 NASCAR Grand National Championship is ready to go. Darrell Waltrip, the defending Winston Cup champion, is the fastest qualifier. Waltrip toured the half-mile Richmond Fairgrounds Speedway at 93.26 miles per hour. Morgan Shepherd was a surprise, joining Waltrip on that front row. The late model stocks had their run today. Tommy Houston piloted his Pontiac home the winner. 1/3 of that race was run under the yellow, and there were 4 lead changes. 2 drivers will not see action at Richmond. They have some explaining to do to the FBI. In the pre-dawn darkness Thursday morning, federal agents arrested NASCAR drivers Billy Harvey, being led from his home in Rome, Georgia, and Gary Ballou, who finished 11th in last week's Daytona 500. The drivers and 68 other people were indicted on drug smuggling charges.
The organization would offload marijuana from motherships, bring it into this country, and then have it unloaded again and stored. It would be eventually turned over to owners or buyers of this marijuana, and the group handling the offloading and importation would receive a percentage of the marijuana as payment for their services.
During its 2.5-year investigation, the FBI received total cooperation from NASCAR in tracing the drug ring's efforts to use stock car racing as a front for its activities. The group's leader is said to be former stock car driver Bruce Pee Wee Griffin, with Ballou, Harvey, and another driver, Herbert Tillman, as his lieutenants. Also arrested were a number of mechanics associated with those drivers, and $6 million in property was seized as well. In news from Europe, the Noble experiment of John DeLorean may be saved from bankruptcy. The British government had declared the sports car maker insolvent, but Friday the London papers buzzed with the report that an unidentified American chemical company has come forward with a possible rescue package totaling $72 million. Finally, there'll be a new look to Can-Am racing in 1982. The SCCA announced yesterday that cars in the European Group C class will run head-to-head with Can-Am cars in this year's series. The cars will have to run under strict rules on fuel capacity, and it should provide for some interesting racing. That's it, Dave.
The MI editorial board puts real thought and effort into our search for and selection of the champion racer of the week. Well, this week, there was only one possible choice. Bobby Allison dominated Daytona Speedway from the moment he made this daring pass to win the Busch Clash all the way to his dramatic entrance into 500 Victory Lane. He was the center of everything. He coached his son Davey, involved in this near miss in the ARCA 200. Lost that bumper, triggering a big melee. But this picture says it all. Bobby Allison, all alone, out front. There's really only one possible champion spark plug racer of the week for this edition, Bobby Allison. Ken Squire has joined us now. And Ken, I think I speak for a lot of people when I say to you personally and to CBS, thank you, congratulations. The Daytona 500 telecast was the best ever.
Thanks, David. That's greatly appreciated.
I want you to take off your CBS hat a minute now and tell me what's on your mind here.
All right, I'm ready to get up on a soapbox for a moment or two here. Now, this may sound like a strange question coming off Daytona, which held the attention of millions all over the world. But why don't motorsports get the kind of attention that we in racing feel they deserve? There are fans, there are dollars. Why do we keep falling short? It seems to come unraveled right where it counts the most, at the entertainment level. The culprit, to these eyes, the sanctioning bodies. Those committees who managed to turn our thoroughbred horses into camels. They managed to take great names and great events and make them dull. The notable exception, of course, Bill France's Grand National Stock Car Series. At NASCAR, they seem to understand their business is entertaining the public pure and simple. Their car construction, their race regulations, they're the manual for how to do it in motorsports. And I think the time has arrived for many of the other sanctioning bodies and the promoters to start reading that manual. Stop the bickering, clean up your act. Good rules, good administration make for good racing. That's not only what the racers and the public alike want, it's what they deserve.
Well said, Ken. Congratulations again, and thank you. And thank you, too, to you out there, the audience. All of us here want you to know that the high point of our day at Motor Week is when the mail arrives. You always hope there'll be some. You hope it'll be favorable and encouraging. Well, I want you to know that it's been every bit of that. There's been a bunch of it, and we really are grateful. We're heeding your suggestions. We're trying to respond to your criticisms. And most importantly, we're enjoying our time with you here on Motor Week more and more. Speaking of time, we're out of it. We'll see you next week.